Okay, we've got White's Hawthorn Packer boots or Explorer boots or whatever you want to call these. This is fun because I bought these used. They were in great condition, so I got to really like break them in myself. But they were certainly old. You know, I don't think these were made in the last decade. Sometimes I'll reach out to a company and be like, "Hey, when were these made?" But I haven't done that with these. But I figured it would just be a fun kind of quick video just to kind of see what's available in the vintage market. White's no longer has their Hawthorn line, but they're still making essentially Hawthorn boots. I forget the exact names, but any of the White's boots that are in the $300 to $400 range that are, that kind of look like a traditional Packer boot or Forest boot, like excluding their all those mock toes and stuff. That's essentially their modern day Hawthorn line. But these are just stunning. Now it's funny, they broke in. They broke in really, I mean they're so comfortable. But they kind of broke in like a vintage pair of boots would. So they almost look like a little older than they really are as far as use is concerned. Yeah, like I said, I just bought these on eBay. But they were barely broken in. But I've worn them a lot. I've worn them to work, and I work on a farm, but minimally, not a lot. This was already happening. Just a little bit of delamination between the welt and the midsole. Now I don't know. I don't know what's. I don't really know much about the internal components. I mean, the inside does have a. There's like a leather kind of heel slip, but something that I just some of these higher end boots just have the nicest arch curve, and obviously these have amazing arch support. These can't be too old, but yeah, look at that gash. These can they can put up with it. Yeah, brass eyelets, speed hooks. I really just adore this logo. Hawthorn Explorer. Almost looks like an old university logo. Kind of not as like rugged. What does it say? 1896. Yeah. It, kind of a boring video would be, but maybe an interesting video would be like, comparing comparing White's Hawthorn to regular White's boots line, and I do have the Rose Anvil White's boots here, but it's just not an accurate comparison. I mean, these are hand welted, these are new, these are current day Whites, and those are. These are vintage Whites. I don't really know what was going on in the factory at the time. But it's a great boot. These just feel like you'd expect a vintage kind of Packer boot to feel. The leathers, just this great kind of medium thickness, chrome tan, not super thick, but still super robust, can put up with a lot. God, how terrible would these look on wedge soles? Wouldn't that just be horrendous? Yeah, what's the worst thing what's the worst thing you could do to these boots? But yeah, really just rugged, beautiful stitching. For a minute I was like, is this welt rubber? Because it's just that black, but it's just a black leather welt. You can see the actual leather there. But yeah, just there's not much to say except a beautiful pair of boots that stood the test of time, can still kick it all these years later. Now again, these might be 15 years old, they might be 40 years old. I put a nice gash in there, but it didn't do a whole lot. Again, that curve. Unless your foot doesn't do that, maybe then you hate it. But isn't that helpful for you? I don't know. But it's like, will that delaminate? I don't know. It's a bit of a crease there. I don't think it will though. It's all, it's screwed in, locked in, nailed in, clinched. Yeah, these are just a great pair of boots. I love them. And just look at those beautiful scratches right up to the left of the logo. That's what a vintage Hawthorn's going to do for you. And you could find these for pretty cheap, between, let's call it $150 and $350, and it's pretty worth it, I think. When else are you going to get a boot that's quite on this level? Quick shout out to Treetop Goods on Etsy. He's a professor out of Chicago who at his free time just makes leather goods, and he just makes like some of the nicest stuff. Oh man, this focus just does not want to. There we are. He uses all like Japanese brass. This is a Wicked and Craig leather, but really, really nice. Figured it went well with these boots. Not exactly the same shade, but close enough. But yeah, man. I mean, keep an eye out. If a pair of like vintage White's Hawthorns ever pops up in your size, I mean, it's a pretty great way to go. These are a 12-inch, heeled Packer boot. I don't know if I'd buy the new version of these. Well, I probably would because I'm addicted to buying boots. But I much prefer these. I just really, really like these, and there's an innocence to not knowing every spec about it and just knowing that these were made in probably the last few decades. Maybe they're 20 years old. These aren't older than the 80s. I would guess early 2000s. Heck, maybe they are from the 70s. I don't know, but yeah, if any of you know, I'm not doing intense research about these, but if any of you know anything about them, let me know. But yeah, stitching's awesome. The leather's great. Is it quite on par with the current day White's boots, top of the line leather? No, it isn't, but it's beautiful, and it's everything I want out of my leather. Unstructured toe. Might be a little something in there. I don't know. But yeah, you got the heel sock liner. Just a whole bunch of leather. There's a leather insole. Man, yeah, super duper grateful for these boots. What more can you sort of demand from a pair of vintage boots? So yeah, lots of love to Whites and to Hawthorn and their history. I'm a massive Whites fan. I just happen to fall more in the Whites camp than the Knicks camp. I love Knicks boots, but I don't own any of them. I might never. I don't know. I just really enjoy White's approach. It's a little bit more humble, a little bit more traditional. While I also enjoy Knicks' this kind of forward-thinking, very modern-day approach with their YouTube channel and et cetera. I think very, very cool. I like Knicks. I don't know. They're expensive, and they just do the stitch down. They don't do the hand welted, so I tend to get the Whites hand welted, or in this case, vintage pair of Hawthorns. I'll get a pair of Knicks boots eventually. I'll probably go for like a very subdued 6-inch Americana with a lower block heel, kind of a more of like a classy service boot approach. I've got my Whites smoke jumpers and Packers and work boots and whatnot, and now the drifters from Roseanneville, and yeah, but I mean, obviously the Knicks, the Hot Shot and all that's everything they make is great. Urban Drifter, all that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but it kind of is for me. I just happen to keep falling into the Whites boots world, their history. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Yeah, if you have a pair of vintage boots that you found that you kind of feel like, you're like, man, knew these would cost $600-700 now, but I got them for $100, or it doesn't have to be that extreme. But yeah, let me know what you've got. There's a lot of great dead stock boots out there still. Lastly, and I'll leave you with this, but in the top 10 of the work dome, of the Stitch Down Patina work dome, there was a pair of dead stock boots. I forget the company, but I did look them up at the time, and there's still like a bunch of them out on eBay that are just a great boot for $80, $100, and you're getting quality American craftsmanship from 30, 40, 50 years ago, in new condition. So that's always, so check that out. Yeah. Stitch Down Patina work dome. It's up there. It's on the top 10. It made the top 10. So yeah, lots to be had in like kind of the dead stock world or vintage world. Anyway, hope you enjoy this video. Consider subscribing if you'd like, and I'll see you in the next one.